Korea is reclaiming its right to be called an Asian giant. Its economic engines have restarted, and people are optimistic again about their country's future. A few years ago, it was a different story. What came to be called the Asian crisis began in 1997 in Thailand, a country where the economy seemed to purr. But the country was vulnerable because of its rigid exchange rate and inflated prices for property that was financed by foreign loans. When investors withdrew their money rapidly, Thailand was forced to devalue. The contagion leapt borders. Indonesia was next. Then Korea. The world's 11th largest economy teetered on the edge of bankruptcy, threatening to bring the world economy down with it. But within a year, Korea began to show clear signs of recovery. In this section, we will focus on Korea's progress in overcoming the Asian crisis, remembering that a national economy is always a work in progress. Korea straddles two worlds, with one foot in the old world of tradition and culture. The other in the new world of commerce, high-tech, and high energy. This world, which is part of the global economy, was shaken profoundly at the end of the 20th century. Seen from the hills, Seoul is a sprawling metropolis. A tribute to an industrious people who rebuilt their country after the war with the North. From a distance, the city seems unchanged. But many Koreans say the crisis changed their lives.
실업자 측면에서는 저 같은 경우에는 지금 아직은 회사를 다니고는 있지만 저도 역시 언젠가 어떤 그런 계열에 끼지 않는다는 보장이 사실 없어요. 근데 실업자 자체에 대한 어떤 그런 제도가 너무나 좀 미약하다.
남대문이 물론 동대문 시장도 있지만 남대문 시장 같은 경우는 한국 경제 중심지라고 할 만큼 여러 시민들이 이용하고 경제 하나의 어떤 밑바탕이 되는 곳인데 지금 상태로서는 일단 피부적으로 느끼기도 지금 장사도 잘 안 되고 그다음에 손님들도 많이 안 다니고 그렇게 돼 있습니다.
When the crisis hit Korea, the government turned to the International Monetary Fund.
The causes of the Korean crisis were a build-up of bad debts in the banking system that at some stage reached the surface and caused great investor concern.
Hubert Nice headed the IMF team that worked with the Korean government to perform economic triage, working night and day at a hotel in Seoul. With reporters camped in the lobby, the two sides fashioned a recovery plan within a week.
A second reason is the large build-up of short-term borrowing, which at the time the underlying problem was recognized. The short-term borrowings were quickly withdrawn and the panic resulted. And then you are already in the midst of the Asian crisis.
In 1997, the crisis erupted with a string of historic bankruptcies. January, Hanbo Steel, the nation's 14th largest company. March, Sammy Steel. April, the Genro Group defaulted on a major loan. July, Kia, the 8th largest chaebol, defaulted. In a domino effect, the merchant banks which had loaned to the chaebols were buried under mountains of bad debts. IMF economist Wanda Singh worked on the recovery plan. She says the chaebols had expanded without regard to profit.
A lot of the Korean corporations were on a sort of splurge of overinvestment that began, I would say, in about 95 or so. And this overinvestment had a very severe impact on the profitability of these corporations.
Links between industry and banking had been forged by government policy. In effect, the government had directed banks to lend to specific industries. The result was a weak financial system because loans were not based on commercial criteria. For example, banks did not insist on full financial disclosure from the borrowing chaebols. And basic practices such as accounting and auditing were below international standards. The corporate sector, too, was weak. Chaebols overinvested as a result of easy credit, and their corporate governance practices were poor. All of these factors aggravated the crisis in Korea at the same time that other Asian markets were also being hit by severe economic shocks.
With the attack on the Hong Kong market in October 97, investment sentiment turned very negative on Korea, and the sudden sort of withdrawal of capital were the immediate cause of the liquidity crisis that Korea faced by the end of the year.
The headlines concentrated on the setbacks of famous enterprises. But at the same time, the jobs of thousands of Koreans were being eliminated and their savings wiped out. Labor unions took to the streets.
지난해 IMF 이후에 85%가 넘는 사업장에서 저희 노동자들이 임금이 동결됐거나 또는 삭감을 당해야 했습니다. 그리고 지난해 한국의 소비자 물가는 무려 7.5% 이상 올랐습니다. 결국 우리 노동자 계층의 가계소득은 17% 이상 감소당하는 그런 결과를 초래했습니다. 결국 이 IMF 이후에 이 빈익빈 부익부 현상이 더욱 극대화됨으로써 이 노동계층이 그만큼 더 많은 고통을 감내하는 그런 결과를 초래했습니다.
All of these events were occurring in the glare of a political campaign which saw the election of Kim Dae-jung as president in December 1997. That same month, American, European, and Japanese banks renewed short-term lending, and Korea negotiated an historic bailout package with the International Monetary Fund.
This was the largest IMF program in terms of money committed, 21 billion. And also it was heavily front-loaded because it was important to plug the hole right at the beginning of the program.
Wanda Singh notes that the recovery plan had two major goals.
One is to stabilize the immediate financial situation, and the other one is to put in place the policies that will enable Korea to overcome the crisis and to return to a path of strong growth.
The economic reform program was developed by the Korean government in consultation with the IMF. The major points: raising interest rates to shore up the won. However, once the exchange rate was stabilized, interest rates began dropping. Increasing government spending for the social safety net. Merging, selling, or closing bad banks. Pumping fresh capital into banks that could be saved. Tougher bank supervision. Lending tightened, including to single borrowers such as a chaebol. Allowing more foreign ownership of banks to improve management and competition. Improving corporate governance and reducing corporate debt. Finance Minister Lee Han-jae was chairman of the Financial Supervisory Commission when he made this observation.
이러한 정책을 밀고 나왔을 때 앞으로 한 4, 5년 정도 지나면은 그 외국의 금융기관도 국내에 들어오고 그러면 굉장히 활성화된 금융시장을 가질 수 있지 않은가 이렇게 보고 더 욕심을 낸다면 우리나라의 금융시장의 경우에 따라서는 이 동북아의 어떤 허브 역할도 할 수 있지 않을까 이렇게 기대를 해봅니다만은 거기까지 가기에는 수없이 많은 난관이 있습니다. 그런데 제일 중요한 거는 이 경영진을 어떻게 육성을 하고 경영진의 책임이 얼마나 강조되느냐 하는 데 있지 않을까 이렇게 생각합니다.
The Minister of Finance says the reforms are preparing Korea for the new millennium.
한국 경제는 지난 30여 년 동안의 경제 발전을 했던 시스템을 완전히 바꿔서 선진국과 경쟁할 수 있는 개방적인 시장 경제 체제로 변화될 것입니다. 또 하나는 한국이 새로운 2000년에 대비해서 정보화와 지식 기반 산업화를 향해서 변화되는 모습을 갖게 될 것입니다. 이렇게 되면은 한국은 이제 과거의 성장 방식을 바꾸면서 새로운 글로벌 경제 시대에 적응하는 튼튼한 경제가 될 것으로 생각합니다.
Another critical element in the reform program is breaking up Korea's large conglomerates to make them more efficient and competitive in the world market. The Chaebols say they agree with some aspects of reform, such as the need for transparency and accountability. But initially, they were slow in taking steps to reduce debt and strengthen profits.
더 중요한 것은 개별 기업을 투명하게 만들고 경쟁력을 올리게 만드는 것도 필요하지만 그것보다는 5천만 한국 국민이 21세기에 뭘 먹고 살 것인가, 어떤 일에 종사하며 살 것인가 하는 문제에 대해서 더 심각하게 고려를 해봐야 됩니다. 그렇기 때문에 어느 정도의 개혁이 끝나고 나면은 기업들이 신바람이 나서 사업을 할 수 있는 분위기를 만들어야 한다고 생각합니다. 지금 분위기는 기업은 환란의 주범이고 나라 경제를 망친 장본이라는 비난만 하고 있기 때문에 기업하는 사람들이 상당히 의욕을 잃고 있고 지금 투자를 줄이고 있기 때문에 경제 전체의 성장 잠재력이 많이 손상이 되었다고 생각합니다. 그래서 단기간에 빨리 계획을 마무리 짓고 미래를 향한 투자를 시작을 해야 된다고 저는 그렇게 생각합니다.
John Dodsworth, the IMF representative in Korea during the crisis years, says the Chaebols' resistance does not surprise him.
They've made the great contribution to Korea. They have been instrumental in having this formidable growth record that Korea has set over the last 30 years. So now when you get some people coming in and saying you ran into a crisis, you must change the way that you do things, not surprisingly they're somewhat skeptical about that.
During the crisis, the church and other organizations began feeding the desperately poor. Soup kitchens provided at least one hot meal a day, part of the social safety net the country began to stitch together after the crisis struck.
In order to offset the burden on the workers, which was clearly coming, a start was made immediately on building a social safety net and providing benefits for the unemployed, for the poor, and for the elderly.
Unemployment offices opened, something new for a country where employment had usually been for life. That made life a bit easier for people who had lost their jobs. It became simpler to qualify for unemployment benefits, and there was an increase in both the amounts and length of time people could receive them. The retired leader of the Roman Catholic Church in Korea believes the crisis presented an opportunity.
이 위기가 하나의 전화위복의 계기가 될 수 있는 그럼으로써 우리나라를 재건하는 데 아주 힘을 모을 수 있는 그런 기회가 되었다. 그렇게 생각합니다.
Life is returning to normal in Korea. Families can enjoy themselves again. Many people are going back to work. The country's economic engines are firing up as the nation rebuilds. There are no guarantees that it will be easy, but Koreans are confident that the lessons they learned in building their nation after the war with the North, combined with the lessons of the Asian crisis, mean that their country will emerge stronger than before and claim again the title of Asian giant.